good afternoon. Thank you for joining. All protocols observed. I want to welcome you to today's masterclass. We have two great speakers, Ms. Lizz Ntonjira and Mr. Laban-Cliff. Both of them, I'm sure, are not very new to all of us, but just in case some of you are meeting them for the first time. Ms. Lizz is an author, self-published author. She has published her Khan. She was just having a chat with us and letting us know that she has sold almost 1,000 books. And I urge all of us to log in and find out, share the links of how you can get the books, and let's support our own. But over and above, she's also the Global Communications Director for AMREF. And she has a vast experience, over 15 years of experience in strategic communications and public affairs matters. And so she'll be with us today as she just breaks down the topic, the art of communicating effectively and authentically. I'll share both their LinkedIn profiles so that you can also connect with them now and also beyond the 1.5 hours. Laban-Cliff is also one of our great speakers today. Laban drives rally cars, I just found out, and he's driven a Mitsubishi Evolution 9. For those who love machines, that's a beautiful machine to drive. But he's also the Deputy Director of Communications at the Presidential Delivery Unit, yes. My mother tongue fails me, doesn't it? And so he works in the President's office, and his main agenda is really to talk about, communicate about the Big Four agenda. Previously, we've all seen him on screens. He was working at Nation Media Group as a business reporter, and he's also been a news anchor, both at CSNBC and CSNCB Africa and Nation Media. Over and above, he's also a service to society to Strathmore University, and of course we say thank you. He's been an MC at almost all our open days at no cost, so thank you so much. So both of them are both alumni from Strathmore University. Liz has done her master's in public policy management, and Laban has done his Bloomberg Initiative, Media Initiative in Africa course, 1-year course. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anne, for that.
Yes, and so that I'm not the one speaking more than people we have invited, I'll just start us off with the first question, just to kind of break it up. And this one I'll start with Liz. Liz, you've been in the communication field for over 15 years, and I find also myself that sometimes communication is mistaken. As one day you can be told you're a marketer, another day is fundraising. So over your years of experience, what would you say communication is actually?
Well, you know, communication is really a two-way street of how we engage, whether verbally or non-verbally. There's always a recipient of some form of information. Then there's always that feedback loop. So there's usually the sender, the receiver of the message, the feedback, and then it goes into sort of like a feedback loop. So we've been communicating since, and you know, communication takes different formats. We've all been communicating since we were born, believe it or not. When a number of you were born, the first thing you did is cry when you came out of your mother's womb. And that's one of the ways that, you know, the doctors found out that you are okay, because if you don't cry, then they know it's a problem. You know, when we talk about communication, like you're saying, there's fundraising, there's marketing. I always say all these components are complementing each other. When you think about advocacy, when you think about fundraising, because fundraising is a response to the call to action that the communication, a call to action from the communication that has been put out. So if you're working in a communications department, your ideal role is to ensure that you're able to translate the vision, the mission, the goals of your organization, that includes the strategic plans of the organization, into something palatable that your specific target audience can be able to understand. And when I say specific target audience, is a lot of times the biggest challenge in communication, you want to please everyone. You can't please everyone. You have to really do a proper stakeholder mapping. And I'm certain a number of you have heard of stakeholder mapping, or your target audience, or your brand community. So all those words or terminologies are synonymous. Your brand community is the people who really resonate with the kind of products or services that you give out. For instance, for Strathmore would be part of your target audience would be high schools, would be parents, would be policymakers, etc. So it's very important for you to really be able to define who your niche market and your target market is. Well, in fundraising, those two really work close together. So when you're doing a campaign, and the campaign is about raising funds to meet water and sanitation needs in a particular community, you have that message that is crafted in collaboration with the communication team. Then there's that specific call to action. What are you calling people to do to help the community in terms of water and sanitation? When you think about advocacy is, you're trying to advocate for certain policies. You're trying to advocate maybe for youth employability. You're trying to advocate maybe for to bring teenage pregnancies to the fore, and we need policies from government to look into that. So that's really advocacy, and you also have a niche market for that, and communication plays a critical role. And I'd like to say communication really is the center of everything that we do. Even now, as I speak, I'm communicating to you. So even when you're making gestures, when you're using Braille, when you're using sign language, all those are forms of communication. So you have to think about your strategy in communication. What are your plans? And communication is quite big, particularly now with new media. We've stopped doing things the way we were doing 5, 7, 10 years ago. Our messages have to be very short, succinct, to the point. So, that really encompasses what communication is.
Thank you so much, Liz. I didn't ever think about it that I started communicating when I cried. That's the day I started my first communication. So Laban, since you cried, you've been communicating till date. What in your area, what would you call communications? How would you define communications?
Thanks, Anne, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I sent a wave to Liz, and I'll do that again because we've actually been on the newsroom together. This is at NTV, and it's I'd say it's full circle because look at us now serving in a different field. While I'm also in government, she's in the non-governmental space. And I can say it's usually a small world, to be honest, and great to be here back at Strathmore again. Just a bit of background: I did my BCom at Strathmore between 2007 and 2011, and I think where I first got in tune with communications was during the student council, where we had the first student council. Most of us will know it as the union, but of course in Strathmore was the council, so it made it a bit unique as a public relations representative. So that was my first touch point with communications, but I never quite knew that I would actually go into a communication space. Why? Because the passion was usually in HR. So particularly HR would do a lot of recruitment, talent management, talent development, and what have you. And then you realize when you go into an organization, there's something called internal communications. And this is all about how does the HR communicate strategies, policies of the organizations to the entire corporate. And here we're talking about General Electric, and you can imagine GE Africa spans across the continent. You have Nairobi as the headquarters. So you have to talk to an audience in West Africa, try and make the conversation to a West African audience, try and make a conversation to a South African audience, something like that. And it was, I must say, it was challenging because at the time, you'd always think that these are all siloed kind of boxes: HR, marketing, communications, PR, and what have you. Then we're going to corporate to realize, oh my goodness, as a HR trainee at the time, you really have to understand how do you communicate to your staff and ensure that they actually understand the policies, directions of the company at a very detailed level. How do you support the management in ensuring that executive communications is actually inculcated or management is not misunderstood, say for instance with the staff. So I mean, now at a very young age, I was also exposed to a lot more on executive communications. So first track to what I did, well, you can say the rest is history. Moved in from the HR team a lot more into journalism, and at the time, as you mentioned, was CNBC Africa, starting and covering business news across the region, and then that's how I managed to jump into NTV after getting awarded as the best newcomer in business journalism. So it was surreal, and it was like, okay, well, this is the space that I needed to be. And Namasa, that's the time I joined Lizz, and of course, all of you know that Lizz was actually a yearly fellow and traveled to the States, came back, and I think she saw the light and left the newsroom, and we've never seen her again before. So why I'm saying full circle is because to a student who's listening or to somebody who's perhaps studying, they might just feel, okay, how do I just jump straight into communications? I think I'll not be a better communicator without having that all different experiences in the team, say for instance now in HR, in marketing, and journalism, to understand how best to communicate. Now, you realize in the media space, we are basically, we actually tell the audience, the information that we have. Now, more often than not, organizations struggle how to relate and how to deal with journalists and how to deal with media houses for them to get their messages across. So right now, the Presence Delivery Unit, I think the onus is on us to see how then do we make the conversation, or how do we make the information palatable to the journalist for them to take it up and actually relate in the newsroom. What it means is you don't just give a speech that is half an hour long and expect that Lizz will read it on primetime news and for that half an hour, for instance. So we tell our CEO, we tell our president that, hey, when you go out there, you need to get those high punchy, so shall I say, bites, we call them. That's now from the newsroom space. But from our space, we call them high punchy paras that the media will actually pick up. What does it mean? High on figures, high on facts, high on figures, perhaps maybe quotes and what have you. So it's an opportunity for any young communicator or someone who's in the communication space to understand that all these things relate. There is a whole pyramid, or shall I say, like there's a whole circle. Let me just still use the word circle. In terms of understanding how the newsroom works, understanding how corporate works, understanding how perhaps government communicates, understanding how the NGO field would communicate as well. So, so that's just a bit of the background and how I found myself at the PDU. Ours is on speaking about the projects. Now, recent data has shown that Kenyans don't understand projects that are like government projects, or they don't understand that this is actually a project by the government, or they'll just see, say, for instance, the Nairobi Express Highway happening, and they'll say, okay, well, these Chinese are here. The Chinese are actually investing in the country, and perhaps not really appreciate the work that has been put in across various government circles in trying to see that this is actually a project for Kenyans, and this is what it will do. This is how it will reduce traffic and what have you. So ours now is to try and see, not to spin, but try and see how to make sure the facts are out there. Because remember, we're not only communicating to the public, we're communicating to our investors, we're communicating to our stakeholders, people who are really keen on seeing how government investment moves. Yeah. So at the PDU, we're charged particularly in dealing with project communications, and that really fell squarely under our docket. Ours is on to talk about the big four and talk about the presidential projects. I know most of us have asked, okay, well, so what's the difference between the team that actually sits and moves around with the president? And of course, that is the team under President's Strategic Communications Unit, that's headed by Kanze Dena. My team, of course, is headed by Nixon Nganga, who's formerly of Citizen. So I must say, Anne, it's really great to be in this space. I think, as Lizz would mention, but maybe perhaps you miss the buzz of being on TV because it's always an adrenaline rush. But at this point, it's oh, she doesn't miss it. She doesn't miss adrenaline. Well, I must say, maybe the few minutes before you go on air, when you just start the news, maybe that's the bit about that you miss going on telly. But from where we sit, I think it's more strategic. And as Lizz mentioned, right now, communications has been disrupted. You have to be really short, precise, to the point, ensure that your audience understands what they're saying, people's attention spans have reduced. Your audience, they just want that information in a minute. Now the videos are no longer 10, 15 minutes. You try the YouTubers who are here, the people who are actually managing the online assets of the organizations. Forget about those 20-minute clips. If you're not saying anything on YouTube within 6 minutes, just cut it. Because people don't want to actually spend, because there's a lot, there's competing, everyone is competing for the attention of the audience. So imagine now moving away from a government that perhaps would believe on print ads, for instance. I'm just speaking about it, perhaps for the communication professionals. How do you now move away from that in ensuring that we as government can actually reach out to our audiences on Instagram? And it's funny because that's something that perhaps most people will not think about, but that's where the conversation is headed. And I'm happy to speak about our partnership with Facebook, with Twitter, with LinkedIn, and seeing how now government can work with I can't even call them social media giants. These are really tech giants who can span across and can work with us in ensuring that the government messaging, particularly on government projects, is actually hard. So we're not there yet. And of course, now the onus is on us. We're getting towards an election season. So a lot more Kenyans and a lot more investors and stakeholders will be interested in knowing what exactly has the government done. And of course, that is now our job, rolling up our sleeves.
Thank you so much, Laban.
I just want to...
Sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, I want to add something to what Laban has articulated in terms of being very short and precise in your communication. Yesterday, I was giving a lecture to some senior executives in the College of Human Resources. And, there's still that archaic thinking of, let's do a documentary, a 20-minute documentary, or a 10-minute documentary. And Laban will bear you witness that those are the things when we're in media would play at around after the main news at 10, 11, when nobody's watching, just because honestly, nobody cares to watch a 20-minute, conversation about the work that you're doing. What they're more interested in seeing is short, succinct messaging. It could be in various forms. It could be an animation. It could be an infographic. And we've seen this work very well, particularly now that we're trying to ensure that to curb misinformation and disinformation, particularly on the whole pandemic issue and vaccine uptake. So I'm going to talk about, just permeating from what Laban said, the 7 C's of communication. Your communication has to be clear. And to be clear is, a whole paragraph talking about the same thing does not add value, but if you have 2 sentences that actually articulate what your end goal is more sufficient to your target audience or to the receivers of your message. Your communication has to be clear, it has to be concise, it has to be concrete, it has to be correct. Correct is really something that, particularly in my space, I've done quite a number of publications on misinformation, only because now there's a lot of access to, everybody has a smartphone, right? And anybody can be able to set up a blog. And then you create this narrative that you're an opinion leader about certain issues and you're misleading the market. So your information has to be really correct. Check the sources. Are you telling people the correct thing? Have you checked with a technical expert around that area? The other C is coherent. Does your message make any sense? And it's quite unfortunate, and I'll put Laban to the spot, that after the last communication from the president, everybody started asking, okay, I didn't understand what was said. Yeah, so your communication has to be really coherent so that then you don't have too many people clarifying that messaging. It has to be complete, right? It has to have the starting point, the body of the message, and the concluding part of the message. And the conclusion could be a call to action, could be certain issues depending on the messaging that you have. Finally, it has to be courteous. You have to be courteous to people. It's, that's really getting into the emotional part of people. It's not always about And during yesterday's lecture, we had a representative from the Kenya Revenue Authority, KRA. You know, often we hear pay taxes, pay taxes, pay taxes, right? But wouldn't that message be better if we went to a rural community where the roads are not built and we say, this is what your taxes will do. They'll help us build this road similar to the one that is in another particular county. Don't you feel business people or anyone who's been doing tax evasion, tax avoidance will feel, yes, I'm actually contributing to the community growth, to the development growth of my country. So those 7 C's, I'll just repeat them: clear, concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete, and courteous. That's just what I wanted to add because I think it's really important.
Thank you so much, Liz. And
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you so much, Liz. For those who are joining us, today we are speaking about the art of communicating effectively. Welcome. We have Liz and Laban, and as we speak, at the end, I'll share their LinkedIn profile so you'll be able to connect with them even after this. But just you can plug in, and as we are continuing, you'll pick the conversation. So Liz, you've been in this field for a long time, which is very good because there's a time that communications was an ad. You know, you do communication, they do everything, and then they say, have you told communications? I'm sure you've had that statement.
Yes.
Well, thank you to 2020, then we were thrusted to the front. And I wanted you just perhaps to say, what has been your experience with that and sitting as a global director of communications? Perhaps that position was not there a few years ago, but now it is. At Strathmore University, our director of communications actually sits at the management board, which is a very important place to be. So what would you say, how has that journey been, and why should we be sitting on different boards?
Okay, actually, that's a very good question. I'm happy you asked that because it is a fight till to date that I do, fighting for investments into communications in the various roles that I've held. Currently, as the Global Communications Director at AMREF, I oversee all our communications and program communications, fundraising, coordination in Europe, North America, and Africa. And it is a huge portfolio. I sit in the global senior management team, or rather leadership team, and I'm also a member of the fundraising and communication board committee of the international board. So I would say at AMREF, I'm very happy that the role of communication is really appreciated and acknowledged. And I would say that has a lot to do with having a group CEO who really has a background in communication and marketing. So he really knows and understands the value that communication brings to any organization. Unfortunately, COVID has come with a blessing and a curse. A blessing in the sense that people now realize the importance of investing in communication, the importance of having the proper skill set in the communication departments. Why? Now more than ever, people are able to understand the repercussions of having incorrect information or consuming incorrect information. So when COVID started, I mean, the WHO has even said there's an infodemic at the moment when there is too much access to information that consumers are unable to filter or decipher what is fake and what is real, what is fact and what is fiction. And, you know, a lot of what we've been doing as an organization is we've sat as in the risk communication committees of a number of African governments, so we can be able to coordinate and align on the messaging around the response to COVID-19, the response to vaccine uptake, because all that starts with communication. Unfortunately, when we talk about communication, we only think of one particular type of communication. When you're dealing with an emergency or a pandemic like COVID, for instance, the general public at large is our consumers, the consumers of our information. So we really have to cluster, where are young people? Just going back to the point of what Laban was saying, Most of them are either in TikTok or in Instagram. So what channel are you going to use to get this accurate information to the people? So you structure it for the youth, for the elderly, for the whatever the age bracket or demographic that you're dealing with. One of the tools that we've seen very efficient during this time has been community radio. Believe it or not, community radio is the biggest platform of where people consume their information in Africa, and that includes Kenya. It's not your Twitters because of access to internet or to data, to smartphones. It's actually community radio. So have you engaged as an organization with the community radios to put out the messaging in a language that people are able to understand? One of the key tenets of communication is also the language that you're going to use. And language here means, is it English, Swahili, the local dialect? Are you gonna use Braille? And I'm really proud of working for an organization that really, puts diversity, inclusion to the fore. So in Zambia, we partnered with the Ministry of Health in Zambia to actually have the information, education, and communication materials around COVID in Braille. We hadn't seen that, and just ensuring that everybody is able to get access to this information was really important for us. So having Braille, having people having sessions for sign language, so that people are really, so you protect everyone. So that's really key, and ensuring that you really understand your target audience, you're able to tailor your messaging to that target audience, is really critical for any organization. And investments. A lot of times I really get peeved when I hear people say, comms is just a value add, it's an overhead, we don't really need it. I mean, it's just so strange that when you launch a product, you want people to know about that product. So how do you expect people to know about that product if you do not invest in communication? Right? And because of the visibility and thought leadership that we have created, using AMREF as an example, a lot of other people, like different organization, funding partners, are actually reaching out and saying, oh, wow, we see you're really good at this space on community health. Can we partner with you? Because we want to get into X community. We want to help people in that community with maternal health, etc. So you're sort of turning the tables from you seeking the partnerships to people actually looking for you for those partnerships.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Liz. And for someone who just asked what are the 7 C's, it's clear, concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete, and courtesy. Just in case you joined in and you're wondering about the 7 C's. Laban, you're young. I mean, there's no doubt about you being young. And then you're seated at the at the president's office as a deputy director of communications. How are you able, even first of all, to just command the respect of much older people and then sell the idea that communications is key? Because we cannot forget that we are in Africa. That's the truth. And young people are perhaps not always at the forefront. So how do you do it? And maybe you can share with us also a bit, perhaps, how you came up with the Big 4 Agenda's communication strategy and how you're championing it.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. And it's I can't say it's been how can I describe this experience for the last about 3 years? Learning, and continuous learning. Why I'm saying that is because at least you remember when you're in the newsroom, you're sitting is, what's the government doing? What we interview ministers, PSs, all these high government officials. I mean, like high-ranking senior government officials. And we'd always pose to them these questions, what are you doing actually exactly? And now you're in government and you're now telling the journalist what exactly the government is doing. So I must say it's not really, of course, been a conversation that is easy to have, because now you're trying now to shift mindsets and shift the normal way of doing things. Why I'm saying that is because government is seen as one. Okay, we have one president, His Excellency the President, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, and of course, being the leader of government, being of course the political leader, but of course I'll speak to him as the president, and of course being in the office of the executive arm of government where I sit. So the idea is, how do you ensure that all these ministries, all these principal secretaries, all these cabinet secretaries, and all the other parastatals that they look after can actually have a clear and concise messaging? So let me start from there. Yes, you're I mean, I've not been what's it called? A career civil servant. You know, I'm somebody from the private sector who's moved into government, moved into media, now moved into government. So I'm very radical in my thinking. I'm very different, and I think perhaps that is the kind of talent that was needed at the PDU to. That's maybe why I was brought in, I believe, to actually give a different way of communicating in government, which is it doesn't end at a newspaper ad. It doesn't end at a newspaper, paying for acreage. Of course, more often than not, that is done for legal reasons. And of course, to make sure that most of you have seen the interviews, of course, with the Minister of Defense and what have you. But for other clear messaging and different messaging, we are looking at different avenues of actually doing that. So one thing I'll speak about, and I think this spans across various organizations, is really how to break silos. As I mentioned earlier when I started, is that we have very different departments that might think, communications that tunahitaji saizi, until much later on, when the launch of the product, as you mentioned, is when now they say, okay, well, now we need a bit of traction. In fact, the conversation that I hear a lot of organizations saying is that, Laban, we need to be trend. Please make us trend. So the KPI for any communicator is, if you're not trending on Twitter, then clearly you're not communicating. But hey, who's your audience on Twitter? You have to really describe, are you trending by hashtag? Is it organic trending? Or is it, and I'm seeing a lot of Twitteratists here. I think I see a link in the house. I mean, you guys understand this whole trending business and would actually, for some people actually doing it as a business. So you come in and engage a few bloggers and they'll say, you know what, we'll make you trend. But it doesn't mean that you've communicated your message. So first of all, personally, I think my charge is to really see how to break the silos. We've begun this by having a central way of communicating thanks to the President's Delivery Unit Communications team. This is a group of all communications professionals across government where we sit together and say, okay, Kenya Airports Authority, we have stopped flights to the UK. How are we going to make sure that now the messaging is out there and we'll have it as a clear and concise message that will speak on behalf of government? Yes, we've had the pronouncement from the President, and we're asking the Minister of Health, how do you make sure that you break down this message that now the Minister of Health can actually continue and sustain the presidential directives that have been issued? So first, the challenge has been to break the silos. We've started out, of course, COVID has not really had us meet physically, but we've obviously engaged a lot with the different communication professionals across government. Ours now, I'll say ours because of course sitting under the PDU, we work with all ministries, is to see how we can inspire the different ways of trying to communicate than the usual way, which is, I'll talk about old media. And of course, most of you will say, perhaps it's not time for radio. I'll surprise you, Kenyans still listen a lot to radio. Some Kenyans circulation numbers have dropped, yes, but still there are many other Kenyans who subscribe to the newspaper. So it's not saying that because of the rise of digital, we're locking out radio and other, what would be like the traditional ways of communicating, but it still exists, but we're trying to see how to complement all this. And just going back to the question about the Big Four agenda. The Big Four agenda is hived off from the Vision 2030. The Vision 2030, of course, is we have a whole secretariat that looks at projects, the flagship projects that we can talk about. We talk about the Konza Technopolis, you've had the Madaraka Way Express. All these are mega projects that actually sit under the Vision 2030. So as the PDU, what we've done is that looked at the medium-term plan under the Vision 2030 and actually said, okay, in this term, what are going to be our key priorities? We're going to say affordable housing. Most of you, of course, have seen our Twitter handles, and I'm going to share that on the chat box. At PDU Delivery, we've gone across the country and we've had affordable housing for all. We have projects that investors have come in and said, hey, how do you work together? Talking about affordable healthcare. I mean, I wouldn't want to speak a lot about, but Liz will tell you that, of course, I'm in partnership with the government. There's been a lot of conversation, especially with the CEO, Dr. Gitai, it's a good opportunity, it's a good opportunity to actually see how he's very vocal. And again, at the same time, sits at the UHC 2030 board. And that's a good conversation to have, because as Kenya, we're actually focusing on a UHC priority plan. We're talking about agriculture, we're talking about manufacturing. How do we double our manufacturing output? And you might say, oh, because of COVID, the manufacturing has dropped. No, we've talked about single-digit output on manufacturing. But of course, the manufacturing sector has come in strongly, and they've said, hey, even us as manufacturers can actually contribute in terms of PPEs, in terms of coming together and moving on to that fold. So that's the Big Four agenda. That's the priority aspect of the president. Has it, of course, been shaken up? Yes. Of course, you'd say that we need now to prioritize a bit of more health advancement, health coverage. The UHC has come in quite strongly. So that's about it. And of course, if you ask me, I think to anyone who's out there, any student, any innovator, I think something that has been keeping me awake at night is to measure now the impact. So if you look at the Big Four agenda, if you look at the 4 pillars, how do you now make sure that, and say, okay, Laban, look, you guys have communicated a lot more about housing. Now we need to shift focus to that. Of course, we have those resources under the GAA, which is the Government Advertising Agency. But as I said, I mean, there's always the young, innovative way, but that doesn't track, say, for instance, a post we did on TikTok, or a post we did on Instagram, or a post we did on Facebook. It just tracks what the public, perceives of it. So I think there's also the need for new ways of monitoring and evaluating communication. This cannot just be the old type, the old way of doing things. So I can say that's it, Anna. And of course, as it is, it's never a destination, to be honest. There's always a new ways of doing things. And I might just admit again, and because they are actually our partners, is all these tech companies, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Twitters, have our government affairs policy kind of teams. And I must say that they're also quite keen in ensuring that even as the government communicates, they can actually sustain the conversation and assist and partner with government in these spaces. And of course, a huge shout out to them, because as it is, I mean, you're talking about one organization running Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. WhatsApp is actually a good communicating tool, a tool for communications. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Then maybe I'll leave it out for Lizz. I don't know if she has anything else to add onto that bit, particularly on the UHC, because I know from your side as well, there's just been a bit of traction with AMREF as well, and seeing how they can work with government in advancing the healthcare pillar.
Absolutely, so much. I mean, we work very, very closely with the Ministry of Health and the government of Kenya in our operations in Kenya, to ensure that access to health is to each and every person. And, the key tenets of UHC is ensuring that we don't, cause financial burden. We need to eliminate that financial burden to people. One of the challenges of UHC that we did research on is universal health coverage is really big. How do we break it down to small, chewable, components that your local mwananchi, somebody from a village in Taita, will be able to understand? UHC means this, yeah? So that's something that we've been working with the Ministry of Health to really be able to articulate.
Thanks, Lizz. And of course, just a shout out to AMREF, and it just shows that really government cannot achieve its agenda without that whole, and I know it's been mentioned in Strathmore, I need to remember that term. It's actually a Harvard Business School term that had actually been, okay, sorry, I'll remember that. I don't want to call it public-private partnership, but it's more like that. It's a PPP, yes, but I remember the time, and actually just mentioned it before we close, but it makes sense that government can sit out there and say, okay, you know what, we can work on our own. No, we need the developmental partners, we need the non-governmental organizations, we need the private sector to actually come on board and see how to actually work with government in achievement of its priority plans.
Thank you so much, Laban. I want to get back to Lizz about authenticity. So they talk about communications, and then there's the authentic part. And I want to put you on the spot. I'm sure you listened, you watched as the IMF went viral, and actually the BBC, the headline on the BBC, if I remember correctly, was "Letter from Africans: Kenyans protest over growing debt," and that's something that perhaps we would never have done perhaps before, because perhaps there was no Twitter and stuff. So I want you to take one side. I don't know which side you'll take. I don't know whether you'll take as an IMF communications director or you'll take the government's communication director. But if it was you, how would you have responded and still ensure you have the 7 C's that you said: clear, concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete, and courteous?
Yeah, I mean, the advent of new media has definitely made accountability better in terms of governments being accountable, in terms of policy implementation being enhanced. I think sometimes, though, we need to be careful on jumping on bandwagons when we don't really understand the subject matter. I think and you will notice even on my digital footprint, I rarely comment on things that maybe I'm not too sure or understand them. First, I need to read and understand. And it's really important for people to know the subject matter, right? It's really important for people to focus on the purpose of whatever campaign that you're putting out or whatever you do not agree on, and give your valid points. It's not, I'm not agreeing with this because Laban is also not agreeing with it, yeah? It's also about being organized in your thoughts. So if I was the government communications lead responding to this, I would actually quickly work with the internal teams, because comms is really a support function. You really need information from other departments to be able to package it in a succinct way. I would quickly call for a crisis team meeting, and with all business units involved or departments involved, and ask for, in the past, don't even go far, in the past 3 years or 5 years, what have we done with the money that we have been loaned, right? What projects can you really articulate that we went to Makueni and did this, we built a road in Mombasa, we did X and X, being really transparent about the things, because it's actually public money. When you take a loan, it's, your any initiative that you undertake with public money should be guided by the public interest. So you have to be transparent about it. List down everything that you've done with the money, and also, to an extent, be truthful about the shortcomings that some program implementation has had. And that's how you gain trust from the people. I think that's the way I would really approach that particular subject. If there is nothing that we've done with the money that we've been able to acquire, then I would say the government would be in trouble. I'd actually resign because then I don't know how to defend, things that are not factual, I just want to make a comment about social media. It is really, really important to discern misinformation and facts. Oftentimes, being trending, I would rather 3-4 people that I'm really targeting get the message that I'm putting out, as opposed to trending. After you trend, then what? So what? How do you answer the so what question? So we trended, and then was there any tangible output from that particular trending topic? If there was a policy change that came to, thereabout, that's fantastic. That shows that there's impact. If there was a policy change, I remember one time there was a tweet that was trending on a pothole that was on a slip road that was causing accidents. I can't remember the road. And because a lot of people complained, in a week's time, that was fixed. That's the power of social media. And I think that's the power of positive impact that social media brings. However, we've also seen people cyberbullied, trolled. We've seen, and I think this is a big issue amongst young people, and there are lots of young people here. we like comparing. So when you go to Instagram and I see Laban is living such a lavish life, I start, comparison is the killer of all joy. And I think that's why there's been a rise in a lot of mental health issues, a lot of depression. So we also need to be very careful. We always say it's good to take water, but excess water is also bad. So too much of anything is dangerous. So that's how I would handle that particular issue. But it's also really important, as small as an organization as you are, to always have a risk communication committee. And what is that? That's a team that whenever there is a challenge, and this comes with the role of communication. Communication is just not to communicate about our products, about the services, about that we offer, about the good work that we're doing, but it's also about anticipating some reputational risks that may happen. For instance, when I worked at IBM, I recall a time, in one of our facilities outside, not in Kenya, outside of Kenya, somebody was found murdered. That's a risk issue. We have no control of it, but it's a risk issue. We have a university, the AMREF International University, under our group of different subsidiaries. If two students were fighting and they are students of the university, it is a risk, even if they were fighting outside of the confines of our university. It's still a risk to us because our name will be there. The headline would read, 2 AMREF university students kill each other or fight. Yeah, so you always have to anticipate these risks. And when you anticipate them, look for a holding statement, look for the public facing person, the spokesperson, the person who is the only person that is supposed to communicate around that issue. Because one of the things I've noticed that is a challenge is there's a lot of uncoordination. So we have Anne saying one thing, Laban saying another thing, Liz saying another thing. One of the things I really ensure is ensuring that we've identified specific subject matter experts and spokesperson of an organization to speak around strategic issues. The people that talk on topical issues like infrastructure development, like health, those are like technical subject matters that matter experts that you need to train on how to public speak, how to engage with the media, just going back to what Laban has said, and etc.
Thank you so much, Liz. And indeed, I think coordination and communication is key. Teamwork makes the dream work. Laban, I am having this young startup. Maybe I've started a small bakery, and I now need to do communications. Perhaps I don't have the muscle of communication tools that perhaps other people have in funding or maybe cameras and stuff. So I only have WhatsApp, and WhatsApp we know is the biggest tool in communication in the country. So tell me, I'm a startup and I'm listening on. How would I use WhatsApp as a communication tool effectively?
Thanks, Anne. And I would definitely want to not to be kind of, again, not to sit on the box, still want to still maintain the circle of not wanting to go into marketing, PR, and communications. I think, Liz, maybe that's something we can talk about at the tail end about the masterclass. Because I know even in our organizations, people get a bit confused into exactly what do you guys do? Is it PR? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it communications? I think it's something that I also wanted to do a bit more study onto in business school in trying to see, okay, well, as a CEO or as a CFO, how do they perceive communications in that view? So I look at it as you have your bakery, you're a startup, and you're seeing how do you communicate, or how do you position yourself, so that I don't mix it up, whether you're trying to market or trying to make a sale, or just trying to have your cakes out there or have your brand visible. So I look at it as WhatsApp, of course, bought by Facebook. One really profitable companies really try to relaunch themselves and trying to create this whole WhatsApp statuses and stuff, new features across board. The other day, my WhatsApp was hacked. I don't know if you guys ever experienced that. So yeah, Liz, I mean, it's crazy because I didn't know about this.
I didn't know WhatsApp could be hacked.
WhatsApp can be hacked. Get it from me. That I even had to call in the US and make sure, and you can imagine the kind of information that perhaps I'd be sitting with and that maybe perhaps should not be out there. And it really was a risk. So with the advent of technology, with the good things about WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, speaking to them as a group, there's also the risk into it. So now I learned about the two-factor authentication, that now I can put a password that is actually quite unique and different. And this just came in from a message. Somebody just said, hey, send me the WhatsApp code you've just received. Apparently their WhatsApp had been hacked. So by sending the WhatsApp code I'd received, so they had hacked my WhatsApp. So the chain continued. I think that has been corrected. And I think there was a statement towards that effect. But we cannot refute the fact that our people, our audiences, our contacts are on WhatsApp. I just did a post about the happy Easter holidays from the Presence Delivery Unit. And I put it on my WhatsApp status. The kind of replies I got, oh my goodness. I said, this is actually a very good tool for engagement. Because the perception is, oh, I'm just on WhatsApp because I'm on this WhatsApp group or I'm on this platform. So if you have your cakes out there, please always put it up on your WhatsApp statuses, yeah? That's actually one critical thing. I didn't know about the broadcast list until, of course, you get it from your prayer partners and your prayer groups, and they'll always make sure that you get this one message from your prayer partners, and you're wondering, okay, well, how is it that I get a 5 a.m. message every morning and actually get it from this particular person? And you realize, okay, well, there's actually a broadcast list. So you can have your team of people. So if you're in the business of cake, so make sure you have your broadcast list as your guys in school, the people who you actually work with in the office, who might want to order for cake at 10 o'clock, and put them on the broadcast list. Now, what the broadcast list does, it even schedules the time. It says, okay, well, I want my broadcast message to go in at about 4 a.m. I mean, at 4 a.m. or at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. is when guys are having their tea. So that's perhaps the time they'll order for cake, or at 4 a.m. So you put your broadcast at about 1 o'clock. So, I mean, I'm looking at unique ways of actually doing it. And now let's forget about the cameras. I mean, it always used to be very expensive. I mean, Lizz will tell you one camera perhaps in the newsroom will go to about $3,000 upwards. That it was even a risk for a cameraman to be seen walking in the streets and there's actually a car on standby. Some people would lose their jobs. Why? Because the newsroom has invested $300,000 upwards of a camera, a microphone, a tripod, and you always have to struggle with it. I remember when your Women in Power show, you'd struggle with a tripod going to shoot. And that has changed. Goodness, guys. Why? Because of mobile journalism. I mean, with this tool, and actually, so I need to speak about my fellowship at the University of Oxford. I had a stint at the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism. And at the time when I was at NTV, and then I went into Reuters, and every journalist was given an iPhone and were trained on mobile journalism. They told them, look here, you don't have to go to an assignment with the camera. So here I was coming from a place where to go for one assignment, I have to call the driver, I have to call the cameraman, I have to make sure that my editor knows that I'm coming with a story, to just moving to an iPhone, where you just told you and your pen and paper and your iPhone, just go to this, go to your interview, position your camera nicely. So you're taught about how to position your camera, how to make sure the lighting is actually good for you, and how to make sure that you can actually capture, video that can be used for the YouTube platforms and what have you. So, I mean, if you're running your cake business and you're on a budget, I see phones out there, budget phones that can actually be used. I mean, for as little as, say, for instance, 5K or 10K, you can actually come in and get in a good phone that can help you market your business through the WhatsApp platform. And of course, use it to record, speak, get into a bit of engagement online as well. I mean, Zoom has taught us this. You can still use your laptop camera, So, and I must say it's a paradigm. It's really more of a mindset shift. It's a mindset shift to knowing that the audience has moved. Okay, the cheese has moved. So you move with the cheese. Where are guys? Guys on WhatsApp. Look at people are online all through. So, pump that poster, put that WhatsApp status, share that, not to bombard, because there's always a limit. If you now start overly sharing, that now turns to be, it now moves to noise. There's actually noise in communication, right? It's just too much. It's just in your face. No, you just make sure it's very targeted, very precise and to the point. So, I mean, to that business owner, I don't know if you're asking for yourself, are you running your own bakery perhaps? and
Nope.
you want to share some bit of cake, cupcakes with us. So, free advice, to be honest, and look at this truth. The beauty about it, it's all for free.
Yeah.
Thank you
Can
so
I
much,
just
Liz.
add
Yes, you can
on
add something.
that? Whether it's a business where you're running it as an individual by yourself, whether it's an organization, medium with about 15 employees, whether it's huge with 1,000 employees, 500, the butter of communication is really knowing who your target audience is. Just going back to what Laban said, if WhatsApp, most of them are on WhatsApp, then that's the platform for you to use. It is really good for you to just even carry out a survey on people that, or just look at the cake trends. Who are the people who buy these cakes? I remember one bakery that I used to buy cakes from. And the challenge sometimes when startups become big, it's impossible to find the person. So you move on. So don't forget your customer centricity, because people just move. So, and I remember they remembered the times I would order cake. And I recall getting a text from them like a month or 3 weeks before my son's or daughter's birthday. And they're asking, oh, it's 3 weeks to March 5th. Are you planning to are you planning to have a birthday cake for your son? And I was so touched. I was like, wow, these people know my son's birthday. It's those small things that speak to emotion, because we all like feeling appreciated. We all like feeling, oh, where my shilling goes, it actually counts. So just identifying that target audience. So I usually run coaching and training sessions with a group of young people. If you're interested, please join the network at www.lizzNtonjira.com. And I remember this same question you've posed, Anne, is the same thing a young business entrepreneur was struggling with. She has a shoe business and she wasn't really sure how or who to sell those shoes. And we sat down together and we strategized, who's your target audience? What type of shoes? Are they kids' shoes? Are they for females? Is it for fashion? Is it for, you have to look at all those considerations. And it's just as simple as Instagramming or tweeting the products that you have. You don't have to invest in so much. You can actually do it by yourself. If you look at a lot of South African celebrities, particularly the ones that who love cooking or baking, their entire Instagram is just about food. Like, you look at that food, you want to eat it. Have you been able to really personally brand yourself and the content that you put out to align with the values and the business that you're trying to push out? So those are some of the things to ask yourself.
Thank you so much, Liz. Laban, they say it's true. In fact, someone just received a message today morning for WhatsApp hack, so it's ongoing. Liz, now I'm going into the question and answer sessions. There are quite a number of questions. And Liz, I think I'll start with the first question that has been, you're the one who's been asked to answer. So hi, Liz. I'm a young lady and I struggle with communicating with the team I lead. How do you manage your team members who are senior in age and the male too?
Okay. I'm really happy about that question because I've always been the youngest in all the senior leadership teams and in the roles that I've held in the past, say, 6-7 years. Thank you, Laban. And, I think the way to interact with your team, particularly with people that are way older than you. And I'll give you an example. I worked for a state agency called the Competition Authority of Kenya. And back then, I think I was 25 or 26, and I sat in senior management. And I had people who are 50, either reporting to you or you're senior than them. And sometimes it complicates, yeah? But I came to realize you have to build allies within organizations and just sit with people, understand their personalities, understand their biggest pain points. when you understand those pain points and you're able to address them in your role, trust me, you will win that popularity vote, for lack of a better word. And I recall, because we come from different generations, someone who's 51 years old telling me, Liz, I'm struggling with this. When we go to the senior leadership meeting, because you really speak, you're not scared. Us, we didn't grow up like that. So please just make sure you mention these things. And that's how you continue growing in that relationship with the team members, irrespective of the age. The other thing is just being very knowledgeable in your area of focus. I mean, I would listen to a 6-year-old who really, like, sometimes, just the other day, my son was teaching me how to play PS, and he kept telling me, no, go do this. So it's not really about age. It's about understanding your subject matter. And if you really understand that, it doesn't matter what age you are, people will respect and listen to you. With your team, I always say, it's good to learn personalities, engage with all of them at an individual setup, and then as a group setup, and always keep your channels of communication open. I have such an amazing, vibrant team, and I always tell them, I am a call away, I'm a WhatsApp away. I don't care whether it's Saturday or Sunday. If you need my help beyond work, let me know. And one of the ways I've seen that we've been able to build a beautiful relationship with my team, both at AMREF and at the Lizz Ntonjira network, is whenever we have meetings, the first hour is dedicated to catching up. Like, Laban, what did you learn this month? What has been really inspiring? What's the funniest joke you've had this month? What weird thing happened to you this month? And just listening up to everyone, listening to their passion, listening to what makes them, so that even you as a leader, and I know Laban really likes going to the field. He likes interacting with the community. So you also start aligning his passion with the role that you're giving him. So if I know there's a trip to Makueni and we're going to visit a community, I'm like, oh, Laban, there's this thing. So that's how you continue building a relationship with your team, as you also build their skill set in the passions they love. I always say, don't do a job just because it's a job. It's so amazing if you're passionate about that job. So just ensuring there's that team synergy. I'm really big on that. Trying to develop with your team a culture within your own department. That's really important. So what is your culture as a department? What are your core values as a department? What are some of the things that are a no-no in your department? Some of the things could be as simple as, the other day we had a potluck with my team. Like, you bring your favorite meal that you will cook, we all eat together. So it's just simple things like that continue to build a strong team.
Thanks so much, Liz. Laban, I have a question for you. How do you separate your personal social media accounts, now that I hear you get a broadcast of prayer every morning, from having content from your line of work, such that, for instance, your LinkedIn feed won't be a replica of your organization's social media pages? Because you'd find when trying to gain traction for something, there's the need of sharing and reposting content to try reach a wider audience. I'm trying to read the questions as they are.
No problem. Yeah. I think, yes, I saw that. I think it was from Lynn, if I'm not wrong, and I see a couple more, but Anne will just guide us on to how to respond to them. But I mean, very simple, to be honest. I know as social media or digital media or communications professionals, we are kind of super admins in our various assets. Like, yes, I know somebody else is going to post, but should something happen, I can literally jump in there and actually maybe cancel or pull back the tweet and what have you. So something like that. So that has been for Twitter. We're still waiting for them to have an edit function because, as you well know, there was a blunder some very recently where we had a bit of an online traction during the school visits. I don't want to get into it, but it just shows you how people actually look at it. They might not like your tweet, they might not retweet the tweet, but they actually see it and they engage with your content. So it was also a learning point for me. So I'm also looking at now. You mentioned particularly on LinkedIn. Now let me speak about LinkedIn. LinkedIn, getting from their bosses in Dublin, okay, from the Middle East Africa bosses in Dublin, it's actually growing at about 40, at the time we spoke was 35%, which was just last year. That's about 3 months ago. 35% growth of LinkedIn network in Africa. Why is that the case? People are still, people are looking for jobs, people are switching jobs, people are now trying to go over and beyond Twitter, Facebook, and whatever. So there's a bit of a chance about LinkedIn in Africa. And that's, of course, we speak about the great talent that exists in Africa. So, of course, we also have headhunters who are there looking out for great African talent. So I would say if you're not on LinkedIn, you're missing out. And especially if you're looking out for opportunities. And not only that, and also if you're looking towards growing yourself professionally. Yeah. So I know there are also people who've tried to group social media and trying to say, okay, well, if this is how LinkedIn would actually be in terms of maybe you can group it in terms of your friends, like LinkedIn will be this sort of friend, Twitter will be this sort of friend, Facebook will be this sort of friend, instead of that's upon you to decide. To that person who's posting out on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is more skewed towards professionalizing. It's very heavy, it's very strong, the language is different. And people will actually judge you if you have a spelling mistake on LinkedIn as opposed to Instagram. So you might as well want to make sure you separate the online assets for your organization versus your personal assets. Personally, they're the same. I mean, we've had the Presence Delivery Unit page. And what happens is that if you create a page on LinkedIn, you actually become a super admin. You can create other admins as well to help you manage the page, but it's always advisable to ensure that you as yourself, as Pastor, as Laban, you can actually have your own sort of a LinkedIn profile and a sort of a brand that perhaps detaches itself from the organizational brand. So I'll say the kind of language you'd use on your organizational LinkedIn page versus yourself, it's sort of different. But of course, if you're quite keen, you know who's posting it. So of course, again, that the onus is on you to still carry the brand of the organization, that's such that whatever you also post, you're so sure that if a headhunter is clicking on your page, they'll actually see you're the digital manager for company X. So you still want to make sure that that integrity is not demeaned in a way, you know, based on perhaps what you shared and what have you. So I'd say for LinkedIn, don't risk, to be honest. Don't just risk on it. I've seen there's an opportunity towards even having LinkedIn statuses and what have you. So the way it is and how professional it, I'd say rather have a China wall between your profile and the profile for the organizations, because I mean, things can go wrong. And of course, you wouldn't want your own profile to be targeted, but you'd also want to make sure that it's the organization's visible, that's more visible than your own personal page. And also making sure that two brands are not competing, that it is your organizational brand that is actually seen out there, you know, and that people can actually engage in more with, you know. That's just about LinkedIn. I mean, I see on Facebook, you can still create different pages. Well, you can still post, people can see, same thing to Instagram. But on LinkedIn, I'd advise, please have a complete China wall. Because, I mean, who knows? You're in one organization today, you'll be in the next one tomorrow. So you'll be judged by what you actually posted previously, whether it was still in tandem with the overall goal of that organization or not, you know? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Liz, Christy Maura says, greetings. Thank you for the session. How do you create a communication strategy plus marketing content for a law firm? I'm really
law firms, I'm not too sure, Christine, you can correct me, but there was a law at some point for advertising for law firms. I don't know if it's still there. My law is rusty because I don't practice it, even though I'm a lawyer. But one of the strategies for you to do is look out for what events are either policy oriented or legal oriented, because I'm certain there are quite a number of networking events that are there. If they're there, have you reached out to the organizers? Have you tried to see or leverage opportunities for you to be able to have any speaking opportunities? That could be one. Number two, we are very, lucky we're in the digital age. And, I'm certain you have a distribution list of different external stakeholders. This could be an opportunity for you to create thought leadership for your organization by scheduling maybe monthly webinars. And each month you're looking at the market. Like now there's a new Employment Act that has just been passed. Create a buzz around it and say, Do you want to know what the new Employment Act really means? And want to understand the key highlights either as an employer or as an employee? Please come in and listen in, register for this webinar. So if you can have a calendar of events for the webinars that you're having, by looking at the market and trying to see what really is of interest right now. We saw the demolitions of the houses the other day. Is it a topic? I'm sure all these things, I always say legal transcends everything. So it would be good for you to just look at that and try develop a strategy out of that, because in the tail end, it will indirectly bring a return on investment for the efforts that you're doing on thought leadership. Sorry, and there's a question here I'd really like to comment on, because I really love the question. It's from Olive Aseno, who asks, it's quite long. There's a really misguided perception that communications officers, especially young and new ones, double up as creative designers who lay out the whole annual report, who have to be the sole videographer, who have to be the video editor, the graphic designer, the rapporteur for all webinars, saving the organization money. And I know it happens. This especially happens in small NGOs that, yes, have the budget, but want to pile all that up. How does one respectfully guide the organization senior management team to realize that the communication officer, while it is good to have a comms, has no technical creative skills? So it's quite long, but I think I get the gist of it. So it's very important, and this is one of the things that I've had to do in a number of organizations, to clearly articulate to people what communication does. I've worked in organizations who think communication is just about taking photos and tweeting them. My goodness. Comms is such a strategic role that I always push to be in it should be a management role in any organization. There has to be a management representative from comms who sits in those meetings to really give this guidance. So the way you can respectfully give the senior management or organization is, I'll start with one time I actually did a presentation on the role of comms, giving even videos, giving infographics, and just really laying out to people the different roles in communication, because communications is huge, right? There's the technical, there's the videography, there's the creative design, there's public affairs, there's government relations, there's internal / executive communications, and all these things cannot be done by one person. So it's really good to just do a PowerPoint presentation to your organization, really articulating what each role stands for, and then saying, sort of like, if we invest in this, we're able to do X and X and X, yeah? So you're also showing the value that it's creating in investing in communication. That's really, really critical. But also, if you're starting out in your career, and I'll say this because I have lived it, I worked for an organization, a startup, where I felt used. When in retrospect, when I think about it, I was used. I was coming up with the speeches. I was reaching out to media for media relations. I was reaching out to partners. I was reaching out to videographers because I can actually edit and film. I did that. But you know what? In retrospect, during that time when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, doing all that work, as I was still doing my undergraduate, it paid off. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those skills that I acquired during that time. Because the pressure was intense, you learn to be able to prioritize urgent, important issues. You're able to learn skills that you did not know. So don't take it as a bad thing altogether, particularly if you're quite young at the moment. Those are skills that you really, really need. And I would encourage all of you in this session to please learn 1 or 2 skills, new skills in communications every year. Do you know how to do like graphic design? It's good to start learning. You start doing your own infographics on your own pages. Is it about marketing? Can you put yourself like a target? If I'm selling shoes, this is the target, and this has come because of this publicity I did. So don't take it all really badly. use that first section of my response to ensure that people within your organization understand the role of communication and the different facets of communication, but also sometimes take it in good stride because it equips you with a lot of knowledge and skills that you need.
Thank you so much, Liz. Laban, there's a question here that says that there has been the issue of misinformation. Leaders or celebrities choosing to shut down their social media accounts, citing the inaction by tech giants to deal with the issue of racist abuse on social media. Others have chosen to give up their accounts to organizations to help in creating awareness against racism. How can an organization or an individual effectively handle negative publicity, cyberbullying, and misinformation? Laban.
I honestly feel that there's the partnerships I spoke about, especially if you're in organizations, please try and reach out to these tech giants and say, I don't want to say social media. Well, tech giants are still running the social media platforms at an organizational perspective. What I realize is that the beat about misinformation, fake news, I mean, that has really been reiterated. I find that it's a cliche term. It's really to see how they can actually partner with organizations to cancel all this. Like it should not be that the tech firms are not actually trying to relay information as it would be from the source's mouth. So say, for instance, if you're getting about the COVID numbers, Twitter is better off getting the COVID numbers from the Ministry of Health than getting it from, say, for instance, a different source, because we're the true source, or would I say the government is the true source of such a figure that will actually help them in getting that information. So really put, because that's quite different. Personally, I've had a very rich experience with these tech giants. Please reach out, because it's very different. And I know Liz, you also had the Twitter head of public policy for Africa. These are actually young, vibrant people who are keen to engage with different audiences. I mean, different stakeholders at the time, as it were, because it now gets to a level where if you're a manager, if you're a communications manager, you have a 360 perspective in how your organization really should brand itself and what have you. So having a chat with, say, for instance, the head of Facebook in Africa, the head of LinkedIn in Africa, it will actually really, really help. I'm sorry I don't have the direct contacts, but I think that's where I'd leave it at, because it's very different. Some have had a good experience, some have had a very bad experience. Now, when it also touches on racism, now that even gets to their ears a bit more. Out of George Floyd's case, I mean, organizations are very, 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 very careful about it. And I'm saying that because I've actually heard it from the horse's mouth. I was sitting with a vice president of communications sitting in the US, and she actually works for an NGO as well. And she's very keen on ensuring that how organizations actually leads by example, and ensuring that, hey, we actually have a stand regarding recruitment of Black talent and ensuring that we actually promote Black talent in organizations. Organizations that never had Black, like a diverse talent, let me say diverse talent, they're now going on there and saying, okay, well, we want to make sure that communications team, you guys help us. How do we make sure that we can actually position ourselves and say that Black lives matter? We want to actually ensure that we can actually position ourselves. Now imagine that brief sitting on your desk, and you have to make sure that, okay, guys, as an organization, we're actually very keen on ensuring that we actually have diversity in our talent. So please reach out. And really quickly, if I can respond to the question about the person who works for the law firm, I've been quite keen. I mean, Liz, by the way, I forgot you're actually a lawyer as well. It's true. There's legalese. We used to call it legalese. These guys have very strong terms. They try and communicate in very tough law or legal language. Up until I saw one law firm, I think it's called Gakenya Bagdama something. It's a law firm that has started a podcast, which is very interesting because you can imagine the kind of cases that are sitting through a law firm. They have tons and tons of cases, of course, not mentioning names, but they sit and they can actually speak around the table. They've actually created a podcast in their office, which they can actually converse about. Very close relations with Triple OK Law, which is a top legal firm, the Kaplan and Strattons of this world. They might not be flexible to create podcasts, but if you're in that law firm and you actually want to actually go into something that Kenyans are talking about and something that is very new and unique, how about you create a podcast? Hey, and you don't need a lot of assets. You can just come in with your phone and record, invest in a small microphone and just start talking about, hey, because I would be interested to know what goes in through a lawyer's mind representing you in court and maybe the questions you'd actually have. And the other day, I saw a friend of mine who's a lawyer as well, just start cases regarding marriage. So her focus now is she's created content purely for marriage. If you're looking at it in terms of like, how do you ensure that you can actually go in? How do you go into the Sharia house? Because I mean, if you want to get married, there's a whole process to it. The 30-day wait, all those wait periods and what have you, what are your rights? What are your wife's rights? You know, when you're looking towards cross-cultural marriages, your wife is sitting somewhere in London, she's maybe British, you're in Kenya, and she started a YouTube channel about it. So you can imagine if she's a partner in that organization, number one, she has communicated, she's positioned her brand well, and people can actually reach out to her and say, hey, I actually need of your service and we can actually help out on this. And to Olive, please work. I will not say that you try and make sure we can have a video editor. No, please just work and work. I think maybe Liz would miss that opportunity of maybe being at the tactical or the operational beat of communications, because maybe at a strategic level, you know, you're really looking towards an overall goal. You're talking about a global communications director. I mean, your mind is not really sitting in Kenya. You're actually looking at some of your other projects across the globe. So you'd be a very good global communications director, and particularly speaking to Olive, if you understand how to edit that video, if you understand how to make sure that you understand how to post on social media, if you understand that photography skill set, and you understand that videography skill set, such that if you travel with the CEO in a private jet and they know that, you know what, you can actually make sure that you share this content online, and yes, you don't have your digital guy, you can actually do it. And in my view, I could clear my throat, if I'm flying with the president, okay, and there's no other communications guy to actually tweet and share anything online, then the president can be well assured and know that with my presence there, I can get the content on Twitter, I can get the content on TV, and I can get the content on newspaper. Simply put.
Thank you so much, Laban. Liz, we are running out of time, so I'm going to give you two seconds. Yes. One to say what you want to say.
Cut us, but yeah. I wanted to really give a really important tenet of comms. Communication is about storytelling, and maybe that's a whole other conversation or training around that. Storytelling is so important. And just to summarize what I'm going to say, and just to show you the importance of storytelling, I just want to share with you a video, then just put in the comment section how that video made you feel. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay. You can see my screen?
Yes, okay,
we can. Perfect. So let me play you this video.
Thank you.
We're so used to having water right at our fingertips. You simply ask for it or you turn on a tap and it's there.
I'll start with water.
I need to have a shower.
I would kill for a glass of water to start at least.
Unfortunately, I can't do that for you today. We don't have any water.
I'm sorry.
Okay, bit of bad news. There's no running water in the hotel.
Oh, right, okay. Oh. Okay. You don't have any water?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Lá já não tem mais água. Não, por aí de só.
No.
Y nos quedamos sin agua. Ya comandé su pedido. Va a demorar 6 horas. 6 horas? Sí.
Mas esperar 6 horas por hora, isso atrapalha o seu trabalho.
It usually takes them quite a few hours, like 6 hours.
You ever land on a Q2?
You just get through the day without water. Not everyone has it.
Not everyone has it, but people need it. And if you come to a hotel, you kind of expect it. I'm just like, should I go somewhere else? I have my time is very valuable.
Well, no.
6 horas.
1 minute.
60 seconds.
I'm just going to call him really quick. I'll be right back.
Okay, yeah, 60 seconds.
If you could just hang 1 second, I'll fix all this.
Oh, all right. I'll like 1 more second, and then otherwise I'm gonna have to go somewhere else.
Be right back.
Thanks.
Hey, you. Hi, Matt Damon. It's hard for us to truly imagine what it would be like to not have access to water. But for 663 million people in the developing world, reality is different. Millions of people spend up to 6 hours every single day just to collect water. Can you imagine what that would be like?
if you had to choose between having a job and having the water you need to survive? What if it was your sister or your daughter who didn't have time to get an education because she had to spend hours a day securing this basic human need instead? So that is why Stella Artois has partnered with us at water.org, because we want everyone in the world to have time for what's important to them.
Thinking about, it literally being an all-day thing, 6 hours to go get water. I can't imagine what that'd be like.
Ou não ter acesso à água de maneira fácil. É impensável.
Actually got me thinking, gosh, what am I complaining about?
Ves que en el mundo es un problema real.
Me emocioné.
I don't know, maybe I take water much for granted than I thought.
You can help us by simply sharing this message or by buying a chalice to help provide 5 years of clean water for someone in the developing world. Together, we can change this. Together, we can give them time back.
How did that make you feel? Just write very quickly on the comments.
There's some saying it was chilling. Storytelling makes the whole sense. It's a chill in my sauce.
Exactly. So that's the power of communication. You have to be compelling. That message, that video covered all the 7 C's that we've talked about today. It's about ensuring that even at the end, you have a call to action. So it's such an important tenet for any organization, even for your own personal branding. Communication is really, really key.
Liz, I'll take that as your parting shot.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I think that video is very powerful.
We're so used to having water right at our fingers.
Please share with us the link on the WhatsApp so that people can also use it. Laban, 1 minute. Laban, 1 minute.
Oh goodness!
Parting shot. I know this is the hardest thing to ask you, but 1 minute parting shot.
I just look at what this is the new age. Perhaps Liz and I would be sitting somewhere at the auditorium and would have a conversation with all of you and everyone in the audience. First of all, thank you so much for all the time that you guys have created to be here. I'm grateful to Strathmore for everything, to be honest, for the last 10 years and where I'm at now and what I've become, I believe. I want to draw you to the Strathmore University Library. I'm not sure how the diversity is of our audience, but I'm sure you can get this book. Communication is a secret of staying in love. Communication is a secret of staying in love. It's actually a book that I came across when I was still in my HR circles, and it makes a lot of sense. If you're in a relationship, it doesn't have to be romantic. If you're in a cross relationship, if you don't communicate to your friend and you know about the relationship bank account, if you communicate, it looks like you've actually deposited into that bank account. If you're not communicating, you've withdrawn from that bank account. Basically put is you really have to make sure that people actually know, and with the 7 C's that Liz has spoken about, actually drives and sits really properly into this aspect of ensuring that in organizations, if 2 departments are not communicating, that's just a ticking time bomb. If the CEO is not communicating on a top-down, that's a ticking time bomb. If our president is not communicating to his populace, that's a ticking time bomb. So to be honest, communication is the secret of staying in love. There's a book about it. Go read it. Enjoy. You be the judge. But personally, I would say it's the best field to be in. If you're young, you're starting out, please learn all aspects, learn all avenues that you can. Please interact, enjoy, network. I'm happy that our LinkedIn pages have also been shared. So it's great to have you all, and I'm honored and glad to actually have shared just a bit of our experience for the last few years in the field, and to many more. And to everyone else, Asanteni Sana, please reach out, I think on the LinkedIn pages that have been shared by Anne as well. Asante.
Thank you so much. Laban and Liz, it was a pleasure to host you. I'll now hand over back to Eric Saule for the closure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you very much to Liz and Laban for that engaging, exciting, challenging conversation. That video, and Lizz, I must say, raised many questions, and I'm sure the participants here will try to put into practice what we have learned here. Lizz, you brought an interesting topic about storytelling. That is something I've been following, and I think we'll see how to have another session later on this aspect. I want to thank everyone who's been with us for the last 1 hour, 35 minutes in this webinar. We will be sharing this particular recording of this session, and we will get the link also from Lizz so that we can share with everyone who was on this call, plus those who have left. And we invite you to keep in touch with us through email, alumni@strathmore.edu, our social media pages, on other events that we'll be organizing towards the end of this month, and also towards in the coming months. We have some merchandise for our alumni. My colleague Christina has just posted on the chat box there things you can buy. Will facilitate that you can get them even these days that we are in lockdown. I want to leave you with one message: personalized attention and lifelong learning. Let us help ourselves to grow, to become better, to learn, attend these kind of events whenever you are able. For our alumni, we are in the process of now setting up the Alumni Association, and we'll start with different schools. We'll have chapters for different schools where you can register, connect with others, and then also connect with the overall Alumni Association of the university. So we'll be sharing this information by email, and we'll be reaching out to you through our schools. Thank you very much for taking time. For presenters, everybody, do have a good weekend ahead. Stay safe, and let us keep the conversation. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.